Good afternoon, councillors, officers, members of the public. Welcome. I declare this meeting open. You have no screen. I'm sure that'll be sorted as we move along. Good? No. Is that on? Just refer to that. Thank you. 421. So I'm prepared to move. The actual date is 9th of October to the 17th of October. Councillor Cook.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Kelly, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest for tonight? Thank you. Public question time, Mr Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. Question 1. Can council please advise what actions it has taken to ascertain from the State Planning Commission and or the South West Planning Committee the reasons for their delay in finalising a decision on the master store for Bunbury? 2. Can council please advise the budget amounts received from various sports for ground use fees in each of the last 3 years, giving the total amounts for each type of sports? And 3, what is the council's understanding of the future of senior and pensioner rate concessions from 2016-17, and what has council done to challenge the state and federal government's policies on these concessions?
Thank you. Mr CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to question 1, the City has written to and met with the Department of Planning to provide support for the scheme amendment. This has been referred to the Minister for Planning now for his consideration. Question 2. Given the nature of the question, a summary table is provided on the screen and will be forwarded along with additional information to Mr Smith, and this will also appear in the minutes rather than reading it all out tonight. Question 3. From 2016-17, the State Government will impose a cap on eligible pensioner properties. The current local government rates rebate of up to 50% will be capped at $550 per property. The City of Bunbury completed a survey from Wagga in June, providing information on the effect of this capping. Wagga is dealing with the state government on behalf of all local governments.
Thank you. 7.12. Someone prepared to move the minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Morris, Councillor Hayward, all in favour? Once again, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. The 7.12 advisory committees, working project groups are at 2. Someone prepared to move that. Councillor Kelly, Councillor Jones, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, are there any petitions? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have a petition that's very recent. The River citizens received 3 basins, rounds and litters under the Bunbury scheme petition the City to close the laneway at the end of the stick place litters. Bunbury is shown on the attached town scheme.
And you're happy that it complies with the form, and you're happy to move that we receive the petition?
Mr Mayor, there is the fact that they haven't added each sheet.
Are you happy with the
I'm happy with the
Okay.
content, so I would like to move that the petition be received.
And refer to the relevant officer. Thank you. Someone prepared to second that? Thank you, Councillor Kelly. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thanks, Councillor McCleary. Further petitions? We have a request from Mr Smith to seek leave of the council to speak to item 10.1.1. Those who consent, please indicate. Those who don't. That is approved. I'll call on you shortly, Mr Smith. Now, councillors, 10.1.1 will come out. Are there any other items that councillors wish to raise? Councillor Cook. Thank you. Someone prepared to move the balance? Councillor Cook. Councillor Jones. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr Smith. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I won't require the 5 minutes. Firstly, I have a general concern in relation to the deletion of policies out of the Council Manual of Policies, because once they disappear, of course, they're no longer in the manual, and regulations can be changed and may not really reflect what the local needs are in relation to that particular policy. We all know of the recent experience of local government in Australia, where over $90 million was lost by various authorities, including the City of Melville and the City of Albany, who both lost in the vicinity of $1 million and were left to take court action to try and recover from the people who advised them to invest in the manner that was being invested. It may well be, of course, that what they did was entirely in conformity with the regulations, but they took on a risky investment on the basis of only attracting an extra 0.5% in the return, and the result was that substantial loss and embarrassment for those councils. So I have a general principle that I don't like policies being deleted just because they're repeated in the regulations, because that means they won't be further reviewed by council. And secondly, I have a concern in relation to the financial investments, and the council's fortunate to have a number of those, that those are strictly with the 4 major banks and not with any of the fringe investment entities.
Thank you. Someone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Kelly. As chairman of that committee, Councillor McCleary. Anyone who'd like to speak against this? I'll put it. All in favour. Those against? That's carried. 2 against. Thank you. We go to 10.3.1. Someone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Kelly. Sorry, I'm jumping the jump. 10.3.1, review of digital screen at the City Library. Some prepared to move? Councillor Cook.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move it, but an alternative motion.
Yeah, I've got a copy of your alternative here, Councillor Cook. Your number 1 is in conformity with the recommendation. Number 2 is additional work. I'll take them separately, Councillor Cook, if you're prepared to move the recommendation, which is in conformity, I suspect. It's word for word, isn't it?
It is.
You happy to move that?
Yes, happy to move that.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Giles? And you're foreshadowing a 2?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Cook? Speak to 1 first.
Thanks very much. I'd just like to thank the council staff for preparing the item and presenting it to us, and I'd urge you to vote for it, and then I'd ask you to support number 2. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Giles? Anyone want to speak against this?
No, I just have a question.
Yeah, Councillor Kelly?
I've got a question as well, Councillor Speck. Hand up forward.
I'm the Mayor.
Sorry. I just want to know, with respect to part 1, which leads to part 2, whether or not our staff have looked at some of the costings to date about either removal, restoral, and the whatever comes next. I'm just concerned about the costing of this overall, Mr Mayor. I just want to get a little bit of a brief on it. I might have missed it, but...
Yeah. Mr C, I think page 29 there's a figure of $65,000 there, but is there any, to your knowledge, is there any update on that costings, as Councillor Kelly has requested? Yep, Director of Corporate and Community.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. The cost in the report is in relation to a replacement screen that would be a contemporary digital screen to achieve the same effect that I think Councillor Cook was hoping to achieve. To replace the existing technology, it's already out of date. The screen doesn't support images in the current rectangular shape that we have them, and it's just a piece of plate glass and film. So to dismantle it would be quite simple. To replace it, it's pretty old technology, and it was also also only really designed around a digital art installation by the View Group. It doesn't really conform to any sort of contemporary displays that we would want to run anyway. So we haven't costed a replacement of a projector.
Councillor Steck.
Sorry, but just my question is clumsy on that one. What I was trying to ascertain was the cost to date of where we've been up to date, and then trying to get some sort of idea of what value we've had as opposed to what value we're proposing to spend. It's a bit clumsy.
Okay, so back to the Director of Corporate and Community. Councillor Kelly is seeking information on what has been spent so far, if you have that information.
Thanks, Mr. Apologies, I didn't stand before. We can find the cost of the original installation. It was part of a contract with the View Group. The use over the time was very limited due to mainly the projector not performing. So there was sporadic use, and over the 5-year period, I believe not very much use. But now that contract has run to an end. So we can get the maintenance costs if you require all that detail.
No, Councillor Cook's happy. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, sir. I have several questions, and they do relate to Councillor Kellis. In relation to the initial cost, yes, that was one of them, and I'm happy that you've asked that, Councillor. And I'm also happy that you've asked to seek what we've gained from that cost. What I am concerned about is this new $65,000, and I wonder why we are doing this when my first question has to be, we lease the area. Who actually owns the area of the sign? Do we, or does the lessee? Can you first answer that question, please?
Mr. CEO, do you have an answer? Or Director of Corporate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The facility is installed obviously at the moment on the council library. It's a council facility. Is the existing sign or the existing display that is there. So it's council owned. The it was a grant funded project initially. It was funded from a few different sources. It was done on an arrangement which is now completed, so it will be back to council at this point in time if council installs something new. My understanding of the recommendation is it's about the council just note the cost. It's not about actually doing it at this point in time. We don't have any budget for it.
Further questions, Councillor Steck?
Thank you, sir. That gives me more concern because I now know that we received a grant for a community asset that we don't know if we actually have, and we haven't used it. It's now out of date, and we now have to refund it because $65,000 is going to bring it up to date. So, again, I ask the question, the first question, who actually owns the valid area? Does council or does the people, which is the VU interest group, who actually want to show their stuff and their projectors, do they own the area and the space on lease, or do we? Who actually has the right of way to this space? That's what I want to know.
I'll come back to you in a second, Councillor Steck, but perhaps can we just clarify that particular point? The space.
Through the Mayor, the screen and projector were part of the equipment to create the digital installation. So they formed part of the grant-funded project. They were part of the art, as it were. And then the city took ownership once the contract had run out. So we currently own it. It has very little value, and we have very little means to use it. So it's up to the city whether we want to continue to use it, or if we want to replace it with something else. That's obviously at council's discretion.
And perhaps another question to you, Director, is this recommendation is not recommending that the city spends any money. It's simply to note the current status. So this is not to spend any more money, Councillor Steck.
Yeah, that is correct. It's just as Councillor Cook requested a review, and council.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah. Further questions?
Well, I'm quite happy to take that on notice, but I'm very, very concerned when it comes to a community asset that hasn't been used, and there is an amount that needs to be required to make this up to date.
Councillor Steck, sorry to interrupt you, but you're now arguing. I thought you were going to ask questions. Are you
Well,
now,
I will ask a question, sir.
Sorry, Councillor Steck, bear with me.
Sorry,
Are
sir.
you now speaking against the recommendation?
Sir, what I will do is ask a further question,
Right.
and I apologise if I've gone into debate. What I will simply say is that if the screen now needs to be further digitalised, and it's up to the city, as our director has said, why didn't we use the actual asset in the first place?
Director, can you ascertain why the equipment wasn't used as much as what was hoped for?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. The installation was something the View Group put together. We had lots of faulty equipment that took time to maintain, so it was very sporadic. The contract with the View and the grant is now complete and has expired, so as an art installation, the project's done and dusted. It's run its course. There's no obligation for the city to replace it. It would be at Council's discretion whether they felt that was a good place for another screen to go, and completely unrelated to digital art and the View Group.
Thank you. Speaker against this. A further question, Councillor Morris?
My technological expertise is very limited on this. Would this digital screen, if it was purchased, and Councillor Cook's second motion in relation to renting it on a commercial basis, could this screen be used by BREC for City Fest Oz?
We're getting into the second part of the... let's just deal with number one, which is to acknowledge the limitations, etc. I've asked for a speaker against. Is there anyone speaking against this? Councillor Steck.
Thank you, sir. Whilst I'll simply say I'm not against upgrading the actual city's infrastructure, what I am against is how this came about. Because, yes, the View Group had a funding application. Yes, they got funds. Yes, the council got behind them. Yes, we got some form of infrastructure. But the community lost out because we were meant to get a digitalised area that the community could use. And the doors were locked the day after we gave them the lease, and nobody got access to that building. And we were supposed to get community access to that building, and we did not. So I'm really concerned that this is another kind of smokescreen. So if it's got View Group attached to it, I'm sorry, I can't name people in this chamber, but history speaks 1,000 words, and history tells me a lot because I was here in those chambers, and they were pink paper items which the doors were closed and decisions were made in a hurry. And these people had access to the main library of our city, and this digital screen was there as a consequence that we've never been able to use. And that's why I asked the question, who actually owns the digital screen? And if we upgrade it, and now that, we can upgrade it and say, well, we can use it, well, I want to know, do we actually have the capacity to use it? We now have advice that the lease or the grant is now expired. But where's the paperwork attached? I don't see it.
Speaker 4, Councillor Prosser.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It seems pretty straightforward to me. The equipment that's up there at the moment isn't working too much anymore. LED display billboards are the way of the future, in the way of advertising. If we can go down the road of leasing part of that time out of displays commercially, it may pay itself off in the long term. Thanks.
Thank you. Further speaker against? Councillor Cook.
Just very briefly, Mr Mayor, to close, the asset does belong to the city. Councillor Steele suggested that we do some screenings for the 100th celebration of Anzac Day, and that was done. There was criticism about it because the images were grainy. Well, the images were 100 years old, and it added to the flavour anyway that they displayed. The equipment did not work for a long while. I don't know whether the city had any appetite to use it or not, but it wasn't used for a long time. However, it was repaired by View and gifted or given back to the city. So the whole unit, the projector and the screen, belongs to the city. It's attached to the city building of the library. Councillors, this particular item 1 is thanking the city staff for presenting the report that we have before us, and I'll be asking you to support me with the second bit of it later on. urge you to support number 1.
Thank you. All in favour of number 1, please indicate. Those against? 1, that's carried. Councillor Cook, part 2, do you want to move that?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move part 2, please.
Seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Prosser. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Very briefly, the motion itself says quite a bit. All I'm asking for is a business case to ensure that visual display options are explored for Anzac Park and that the potential exists for the unit to be self-supporting and hired out on a commercial basis. I would like to see council events advertised and special occasions and the possible hiring out of the unit from time to time. I just want to know whether it will stack up and whether we can get a return on the invested dollar. I do agree with the report. I think the particular unit we've got at the present time, and of course the report says that needed to be turned on and off manually during our Anzac performances. So I would just like the staff to go through a business case and try and come up with an option as to whether it's feasible or not. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Prosser. Sorry, Councillor. Question?
Only a question. Could we just get an idea of how much the report recommendation would cost in start times?
Mr CEO.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't think it's going to be anything significant. It's only going to be a couple of costings and a ballpark estimate of what return we think we can get out of it. A couple of weeks we'll just fit it in with the other work we're doing.
Thank you.
Councillor Prosser.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Not exactly sure what the vision of Councillor Cook is here, but there's many options we can go down. We're going to do a few large screens or a few small screens spread around the park. It could then be used for Anzac Day and then maybe for tourist visitors that can come in with displays of what we have in our town, and then again we could have
some commercial leasing on there as well, and to pay off the screens we're going to put in. So I think it's pretty basic exercise to really go through, and it's in my opinion it's worth looking at. Urge you to vote for it. Thanks.
Question that I have for the CEO. Do you know if this or any of your officers can help you whether this equipment can be hired, whether there is any such equipment already in the city?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not sure if there's any readily available in the city. I know you can hire it around the place. Certainly in talking with other people who use these sorts of things around the place, the cost to hire versus the cost to buy. If you're going to use it on a regular basis, it's much cheaper to buy it in the longer term. The lifespan of these sort of screens now is a lot better than it used to be. So not sure of anything available locally, but we'll certainly look at that.
Okay. Speaker, question? Councillor Morris, sorry. Yep.
Question then.
Go ahead.
Could this be used for City Hours Fest? And then, if not, what can it be used for besides an event like the Anzac ceremony?
Mr CEO, do you have an answer? The Director, thank you.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. If we're talking about a replacement as in a fixed screen, then it will only have limited visibility from Victoria Street because of the trees, and it's also at one end of Victoria Street where it's perhaps less vibrant than other places. Could it be used for Cinefest? Yeah, we could put anything on the screen, in theory. You could promote Cinefest. If you want something portable, then we're talking about another concept. We were looking at something specifically designed to replace the screen at Anzac Park. My understanding is portable boards that can be moved around that have high LED would be about $100,000, but they could possibly be put anywhere around the city for any event.
Thank you. Further questions? Speaker against?
Sorry for the late notice, but just one further question. Just on the advice just given, does that mean that you're actually saying that we're actually viewing stills and it's not live?
Director of Corporate and Community.
Through the Mayor, our task was to look at a cost for replacing something that could project images and moving animation. That's what the 65 will get you. If you want something that's portable and we can move around the city, perhaps on a trailer or something, we're probably looking at a bit more cost. But yes, we can. We could screen digital animation and movies. I don't know if it would meet the Cinefest requirements for a film festival, though.
Councillor Jones, you had a question?
No, I'm
Speaking against
the motion.
Go ahead.
how we have strayed from the number 2, Councillor Cook's alternative motion, because we were actually talking about the current City Library digital screen, and now we're all over the joint. I suggest that we vote against this because if it's going to be a cost in the ballpark of $65,000, why aren't we considering the likes of the Graham Bricknell sound shell for something like this, which has a capacity much greater than Anzac Park? The portability of something like that could also be discussed, but at the moment it's pretty evident that the City Library digital screen hasn't performed as it ought to, and as such we shouldn't be supporting it. If there is a need for a screen in the city, then let's do the right thing and investigate the whole thing rather than glue it onto the current City Library position. Yes, such a screen travel around the city would, might have a commercial purpose, but I think at the moment it's not sensible to link both of these, and the matter deserves further scrutiny before we say yes to anything.
Speaker 4, Councillor Hayward.
I don't think there's any trouble in us being able to support this motion, because really we're not committing to spending any money. We just want to find out what it's going to cost and what the potential is and what the benefits are. And I think that's exactly what we're all about. If we want to be able to have a vibrancy in the city, I don't think there's any danger in getting our staff to look at what options could be available. It is quite a unique little area down there. It's got quite a civic feel, hasn't it, that Anzac Park, and it's kind of bordered by the library and other buildings, so it is quite a good square. So I think personally that the potential of having some kind of interactive screens of some description in there could be quite good. But I think that it'd be no problem for us to go and do the research and have a look what we can find out. And I agree with Councillor Jones. There may be also some benefits that might be learned in this process that we may be able to opt to put the screen somewhere else or be able to use it somewhere else in town. So I don't think there's any danger in supporting it, and I think it's worth supporting. Thank you.
Can I propose an amendment to number 2, please?
Sure.
Just to include the words after report recommendation are explored for the CBD. As before, are explored between Anzac Park and for the CBD, including Anzac Park. So
after the word,
for the CBD, including Anzac Park. And if I can get a second, I'd just like to speak to it just a minute.
Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Hayward. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Jones made an excellent point there. I think we corralled ourselves if we just looked at Anzac Park, which hasn't been totally satisfactory in context of looking at things with trees and different light and perhaps the wrong end of town, if you like to put it that way. And I feel that Councillor Hayward made a good point there about the digital world being out there in the city and trying to get some vibrancy there. I think that if, as the CEO indicated, that this was not an exercise that's going to cost us thousands and thousands of dollars, indeed, I think it's probably a fairly a cheap exercise, if I can put it that way, that we ought to look at the rest of the CBD. Councillor Jones quite rightly pointed out another location at the Bricknell Shell. I'm sure that there would be half a dozen other ones that would come to mind as well. So I think that if we enlarge the mandate just slightly, I'm sure the CEO can go away and do the work that he's required to do. It is only an investigation. It is not definitive. Costings will come back. They will come back to Council for Council to consider. And I just reflect upon the idea that at the moment the digital projector at the Breck costs about $85,000, and I think that's way up priority on my list, Mr Mayor. But if councillors are so disposed to include that little amendment, then I think that it just broadens out a little bit, brings us back to a broader area, and then we can consider it when it's here. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hayward. Speaker against the amendment. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, sir. Whilst I'm inspired by
couple of the comments through you, Mr Mayor, of the councillors. What I do have concerns with is that there is no vision here. We're looking for vision with the big screen, digitalisation, modernisation and all of that kind of fabulous stuff. That I don't disagree with. What I want to see is an absolute policy forward from this council saying, well, this is where we want to be and this is the absolute outcome that we want. Now, I'm just going to throw out here the Bird Wildlife Park, for example, and that accessible playground.
Point of order. Are you going to match the wildlife park towards a possible alternative site for screening? Is that where you're going with this?
I'm saying absolute contingency. I'm saying the city has more options than just the ones we've just highlighted on the run here. I'm saying if we're going to get staff to do a report, let's look at our entire city. Let's look at the whole place. Let's say if we're going to give staff the option to look at the screens and options to look at where we're going to deliver this digitalisation and this new modern world, well, yes, I'm all for it. But let's please look at all of our options. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, Councillor Stick. Speaker for the amendment. Councillor Kelly, close it.
No.
Okay, I'll put the amendment which is there highlighted in different colour. Can everyone see that? All in favour of the amendment? Those against? 3 against, that's carried. The amendment now becomes the motion, which is Councillor Cook. Are there any further speakers against? Councillor Morris.
It really boils down to Councillor Kelly really hit it on the head. We've got something that's got a higher priority that I believe within our city, and that's the digital projector that's needed, which can also be commercially leased. A digital screen, I think, has very limited value in relation to it, and this is why I'm not really keen to see any further action done on this, but if we go down that path and we're taking a look at 65,000 and we have 85,000 for a digital projector, which we definitely need for the city as well as BREC, I think that's where our priority should be, and that's why I'm going to be voting against this in relation to why I'm voting against it, because I think there is a greater need in relation to a digital projector.
Speaker for, Councillor Steele.
I think we do need a fixed LED screen. We just have to look at what happens in Northbridge at James Street. That's a fixed thing that is full all the time when you have movies there. That's actually facing into the sun as well, so the reflection of the sun is shining on that during, night time. So it's not our fault that BREC needs that. That's great that they need to raise the money for that, but that's their problem, BREC's problem, not our problem. So we have to actually think of what we've got on here at the moment. That's a separate issue, BREC's, we have to look at. But for this tonight, I think that having it in Anzac Park, the reason I voted against CBD, because I think Anzac Park would be an ideal place for it to have, and if we move those trees, we'd have even more visual, looking at that. But I think it'd be an awesome place to have it in Anzac. We just have to look, like I said, what happens in Northbridge at that fixed screen.
Speaker. Where are we up to? Speaker against? Further speaker against?
Sorry, sir, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Where are we at with moving the memorial Anzac?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, Councillor Stick.
Okay, well then I'll just go for my argument against. With your permission, sir. Thank you.
That this council has gone down the path of initiating the removal of the Anzac Park statue and placing it at the Eddie Bricknell Stadium. The reason for that is because the area is too small. And the reason for that is that there is such a highlighted area that when the crowd assembles, there is no room for everybody. There is no room. And so what we are now going to do is create a cost to something that we know we're going to go down the path of moving in due course. So my view is, why don't we do this digital sign first and foremost at the Graham Bricknell Stadium, and at that point we have a massive area where the community can use this, and we lease that area out in due course all the time. We do not lease the area out in the library. It's a small park. So why are we going down the path of spending nearly $100,000 in old technology, by the way, when we should be spending better technology in a better area, a better location, a massive location where everyone can use it and everyone in this society, in our city, not a town, a city, can use it.
Thank you, Councillor Steck. I think you're speaking very strongly in favour of the amendment. Is there a further speaker for? Councillor Cook, would you like to close?
I'm happy, thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. Those against? 2 against, that's carried. Thank you. Councillors, just a reminder, we have the Policy Review Committee meeting starting almost immediately, and the CEO would like 2 or 3 minutes of confidential discussion regarding staffing. I declare the meeting closed at 6:06. Thank you very much for your attendance, everybody.